This podcast is part of Mishmash Media. Hello, folks.
Hey, how's it going?
Very good, buddy. Welcome to our final Season 1 episode of Curbcast. Curbcast is a podcast where we talk about every episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm scene by scene, and we review it. My name's Ivan.
I'm Stephen.
And like I said, this is the finale, the group, and a bit later on, Stephen, at the end of the episode, we'll give our takes on Season 1 overall.
Yeah, a bit of a wrap-up for Season 1. Yeah, it should be good. Looking forward to it.
Yes, it should be lots of fun as well. We are on social media if you want to drop us a line and say hello at Curbcast Pod on the bigger social media networks. You can send us an email as well, curbcastpod@gmail.com. And Stephen, you can support the podcast and our network, Mishmash Media, financially.
That's right. If you head to patreon.com/Mishmash Media, you can donate some money per month and you get access to Season 2 and 3 of Curbcast, which we've recorded last year. We will be releasing that as a normal podcast over the next sort of 4 or 5 months. But if you want to listen to those episodes now, you can head to Patreon and check those out. And we also have a Facebook group called Curb Your Enthusiasm. So check that out if you want to join the fun on Facebook.
Yes, absolutely. Anyway, buddy, shall we get into this one? The Group, Season 1, Episode 10?
Sounds good.
All right. This one aired in the US on the 17th of December 2000, the week and a bit before Christmas of that year. Thanks to Larry's manager, Jeff, Cheryl is up for a part in the Vagina Monologues. Meanwhile, Larry runs into an ex who asks him to accompany her to an incest survivors group to lend moral support while she deals with her past. And the actress who plays Lucy, Stephen, we did mention this last week at the end of the episode, Melanie Smith appears as that character. She played Rachel Goldstein, one of Jerry's episode girlfriends in Seinfeld. She was in for 3 episodes.
Yeah, another Seinfeld alumni who's come over to Curb Your Enthusiasm. I imagine it's just easy. You know, Larry's already got experience with a lot of the actors and actresses who make guest appearances, and he knows what they're capable of. He's already got a relationship with them, so it makes sense that he probably calls them directly or calls their agents directly rather than waste unnecessary time on auditions.
It's all about networking, right?
Yeah.
And in case you're wondering, who the hell's Rachel Goldstein? You know, for those who don't watch Seinfeld as much as Curb, she's the one who sees George's shriveled up dick in the Hamptons after he goes in the pool.
Yeah, she very obviously snickers at his shrinkage.
His major shrinkage. I love how Elaine's like, I don't know how you guys can carry these things around.
They shrink?
They shrink?
I think it's, I guess you could criticize Elaine for not knowing that penises shrink when they're cold or in cold water. But, you know, I'm guessing most of the penises she sees are the opposite. So...
The opposite, another Seinfeld reference, yes.
Yes, exactly.
They are certainly the opposite. Anyway, scene 1 of the season finale for Season 1, The Group. Larry is gargling mouthwash in the bathroom. He tells Cheryl that they're having dinner with his lingerer uncle, Nathan. He also says that Jeff wants to see the both of them in his office tomorrow, as he has some good news. And usually when Jeff wants to see Larry in the office, Larry, he usually has, you know, concerning news, or Larry just drops in to see how Jeff is doing.
Yeah, most of the news that Larry seems to receive is concerning, I think, because most situations in Larry's life involve, you know, awkwardness or complexities. So, yeah, he does seem mildly concerned.
He does seem mildly concerned. And, you know, it's a bit, he even mentions that, you know, usually, like, you know, if Jeff wants you in, you know, it's something weird. Like, it's something Jeff doesn't normally do.
Yeah, and usually good news is not something you wait to tell people. Usually good news is something you want to tell people straight away.
They begin to fall asleep before Cheryl asks Larry why she is the one who has to initiate sex. Larry turns around and says that he is available for sex and that he is up for it all the time, and he asks Cheryl to tap him on the shoulder. He says that he will maul Cheryl if he wants sex and that he needs borders and boundaries for it. Cheryl says he should try it sometime.
I think Cheryl knows that Larry's constantly horny. I'm sure he does try it on a lot, but I understand where Larry's coming from in terms of like, well, I don't need to initiate because you know I'm always ready to go, so I'll just leave it in your court because that way I won't bother you. But I think just for Cheryl to feel desired, you know, it's a validation thing that if Larry initiates sex, even though, again, she knows that he's always into the idea, just the actual not being the initiator all the time would just make her feel desired and loved.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, she just kind of, she wants to be desired. You know, she kind of wants Larry to initiate it and to have some romance.
Exactly. You know, it's fun to be the initiator and the initiatee. So again, like I understand Larry's kind of logic. He's like, well, I don't need to initiate because you know that the answer is always going to be yes. But
yeah,
being the recipient of an approach. It always feels nice. It's an ego stroke. It reminds you that the person actually does want you. They're putting in a bit of effort. They're trying to seduce you, whatever. This conversation, I thought as well, could have been a lot more, like they could have gone to sleep annoyed, but it kind of ends on a good note, which is surprising.
Yeah, they find like a mutual understanding.
Yeah, like it's an easy conversation about a topic that is potentially fraught with, because obviously sex between married people is tied up with emotion and love and validation and all that sort of stuff. So I could easily see this conversation going south if Larry said the wrong thing just once. If he said just one wrong thing, it would completely derail the conversation. But they both navigate a tricky conversation quite well, and it doesn't result in, an argument or them going to bed pissed off at each other.
No, and then actually it's better that way because we see later on that things, Larry doesn't quite keep to his word in that regard.
Well, yeah, I mean, at this stage, he doesn't know the appearance of Wendy is unforeseen, but he goes back on his word, his promise.
On his word. He does, like he has a few times in the series.
I do like when Larry says as well, do you want me to maul you all the time? I treat your breasts as if they're on my body.
Yeah, it's a good line. He's such a caring man.
Yeah, and then he has a go, and she's like, no, not now.
Not now. Jeez, I'm about to fall asleep.
Yeah, exactly.
I've had a big day. The Davids the next day are in Jeff's office, and he tells Cheryl that Wendy, the director of Vagina Monologues, called, and she is offering Cheryl a role in the performance to replace an actor who had pulled out of the project. Jeff hands Cheryl a script and says that she doesn't need to audition and that she can use the script while she's on stage. And the production starts in a week. Cheryl is speechless at the offer. So, pretty cool. Like, she can still perform, and obviously Cheryl has some background, in acting and, that kind of thing, like very small little experience. But she doesn't really need to do much. She can actually even use the script on stage. That's pretty good.
Yeah, it's a nice, easy gig to get back into the acting. You don't have to, it's not an intense role. You just, like you said, you use the script on the stage, and it's
and you're just yourself. You're just reading your own way.
Exactly, and it's something that that she's keen on doing as well. So good re-entry into acting.
Remember how Vagina Monologues was like a big thing? When did it come out? Like 80s or 90s? I remember it was like a huge, like it was part of the zeitgeist in terms of theater and stuff. I think that was when, like, what was it, second wave feminism, when it rolled through, like it became a more popular, a more bigger hit.
I think it was late second wave feminism, which would have been early to mid 80s, or early third wave feminism, which was late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah.
I don't know a whole lot about it. I don't think I've ever even seen any footage of it or heard anything about it. I'm just aware of it being a thing, so I couldn't tell you exactly when it came out. Or
I think Family Guy did a parody of it once. I forgot what it was, but I'm sure I think I saw they parodied that performance. I was actually thinking that it's just a set of legs and a face where a vagina should be. That's right.
Rather than a woman talking about sex and her vagina in a monologue, it's a vagina with a face doing stand-up comedy.
Yes. It's like a one-man show. I like how Cheryl, like, she seems very speechless, like she is speechless at the offer and she can't believe it. But I feel like with Cheryl, this is like the first time in a long time where she's like an opportunity's come to her and she's like, she has something more to look forward to than just her day-to-day life. Like, I feel like she genuinely appreciates Jeff giving her the opportunity.
Oh, she's well chuffed. She's beyond chuffed. She's genuinely surprised. She's genuinely thankful. And she's genuinely excited as well. It seems like she, maybe at some point she mentioned to Jeff, like just in conversation, I've been thinking about getting back into acting, just dipping my toes back in the water. I'm not too sure how I want to do that. So it seems like it's been on her mind anyway. And then this comes along and it just blows her away. I think if she wasn't keen on getting back into acting, or if she just hung up that hat, she's like, I'm done with acting. I don't need to do it anymore. I want to do it anymore. I don't think she would have been as excited to be offered this role.
No, that's very true. She would have probably hesitated or whatever. But no, I feel like she kind of, you're right. She's kind of had a slight yearning to come back, in some way. And this is like a good way. And plus Vagina Monologues is, she really enjoys the performance as well. So she's very grateful.
Yeah, I think for a woman doing something like the Vagina Monologues, which is, like we were talking about before, is, linked to feminism and just sort of modern pop culture, I guess. It's a big opportunity, but it's also important for her as a woman and as an actress.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and for her to actually do something more, than her usual, like I said, like more than her usual day-to-day stuff.
Yeah, and doing the Vagina Monologues, I mean, we're not at this stage in season 1. Maybe it's revealed, in season 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, etc. Maybe they'll reveal more of Cheryl's acting experience before she met Larry. But I would imagine that the vagina monologues, even for someone like Cheryl, or probably even for most actresses actually, is a challenge as well. It's a different sort of performance. It's not, it's not typical theater performance. It's not behind a screen.
Yeah.
It's, it is a monologue, and it's also talking about topics that a lot of people tend to keep private, even though it's
Yes.
it's a script. It's not her personal experiences. It's still a very, not confronting, but still a very, there's a lot of, you kind of have to be naked, like emotionally naked, to sort of really sell the role.
Yeah. You have to be, and you have to show vulnerability as well.
Vulnerability, yeah, that's right. That's, and an openness to really sell it. Because I've been to one-person shows before, and I've seen good ones where the person is really, really invested in the role emotionally, and then I've been to ones where it just feels like they're just reading a script and they're just there because it's the gig, and you can really tell the difference. So I think for someone to really
sell it,
for Cheryl, it's a challenge. Like not just as an actress, but just as a person.
Yeah, and just for something more to look forward to. She's getting this opportunity, so she'll take it.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, she seems perfectly happy in her life in LA, being married to a rich dude. She just seems like, and it's not like she's just like a stay-at-home wife, or she does have her non-profit business. She's got a lot going on, but it's what's the word? It's providing a lot for her on a lot of different levels, emotionally, professionally, creatively, just in terms of something to do, something different. Yeah, so I think it's ticking a lot of boxes for her.
Yeah, for sure. No, it's good to see. Like it's good to see, because usually in most episodes we've seen so far, Cheryl seems unsatisfied for a lot of aspects in her life, and she cringes when Larry does something awkward or says something awkward. But we see for the first time in a while that there's something really exciting for her coming up.
Yeah, and it's just nice to see. The point of Curb Your Enthusiasm is to just have endless awkward situations, or endless situations where things go wrong for mostly Larry, but sometimes other people as well. People misbehaving and people doing bad things. But it's just nice to see a scene that is just pure sort of almost pure joy. You've
joy.
got,
yeah, that's what I was thinking. Yeah. Yep.
You've got a friend offering a friend a role, and she's genuinely excited, and he seems genuinely stoked that she's stoked as well. That it's just like it's almost like a wholesome scene in a show that's mostly unwholesome.
Yeah, they're not ones that really come up too often.
No, so in the context of, or in contrast to most of Curb, it's just there's a lot of joy, and it's just really nice, and it's just really positive. But of course, being Curb, that doesn't last very long.
No, we see the after effects again, just like in the last scene. We find the after effects coming up.
Yeah, what goes up must come down very quickly in Curb.
Mm-hmm, and we see that many times. They're walking down the stairs of the building as a lady named Lucy greets Larry. He introduces her to Cheryl, saying that Lucy is an ex-girlfriend of his. Lucy says that she's been thinking about Larry, and that she gets upset when she sees Cheryl with the script, as she has been trying to land a part in the vagina monologues herself. Lucy admits that Larry and her used to go out. Cheryl says that she'll wait in the car for Larry to catch up with Lucy. And then Larry, I love this part, Larry throws Cheryl the car keys as she walks off. So he treats her like the valet or something, which is so mean.
It's just so
misogynist.
I think
it's like, here you go.
It's not misogynistic. It's just so like impersonal and sort of dismissive. Like, here's the keys.
Yeah, it's like, who is she, the valet?
Yeah. It's kind of demeaning to her. Yeah, I wouldn't say it's misogynistic, but it's just very thoughtless and tactless and just not very nice. And not
Cheryl,
very rightfully so. She's just like, thanks, Larry. She's not very impressed at all.
No, she's not happy. But Lucy says after Cheryl goes that she wants to get with Larry to talk to him about something very important. And Larry says he is free for lunch during the week. So Lucy doesn't want to say anything there and then to Larry, but she'd rather, get him alone. So to Cheryl, that means that maybe Larry still has feelings for Lucy.
Yeah, I mean, Cheryl from the get-go is she doesn't seem too keen on Lucy. She seems a bit sus about her.
Oh, yeah.
Because Larry is a bit delayed. When they first run into each other, Larry's a bit delayed in introducing Cheryl. They talk a bit, they make a few jokes, and then Larry sort of remembers that Cheryl's there and is like, by the way, this is my wife.
This is my wife, by the way.
Yeah. And you can see Cheryl like, I'm the wife, like, I'm here, notice me, sort of thing. So I think
I'm
Cheryl
right next to you, idiot.
Exactly. I think Cheryl from the get-go is a bit off Lucy. And then, when she finds out that they used to date, it just makes her more sort of suspicious.
Yeah, because Cheryl says later on in the episode that Lucy's a very attractive woman, and
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
so and she's obviously a bit jealous as well, like rightfully so.
And this is just off the back of, the night before having a discussion about Larry not initiating sex, which to me signifies that she's just she's been feeling a bit undesired lately. So to run into like a super attractive ex, to be forgotten about when you're doing introductions, and then to have the keys thrown at you, it's just this like, it's just like little blow after little blow of Larry kind of putting me to the side a bit.
And to Cheryl, it might be like maybe Larry has like this pent up sexual tension. But maybe you're right. Maybe he's just not satisfied with Cheryl for some reason. So maybe she's thinking maybe he'll just unleash on someone like Lucy to get his desires met.
Yeah, she's obviously feeling a bit undesired or insecure anyway. The conversation from the night before, I think, showed that. And then, the next day you run into a hot ex and you're kind of dismissed a few times by Larry. You wouldn't feel great after that.
Yeah. No, you'd feel like shit, which is, and it sucks because Cheryl had something so good for her in the last scene, and then it just kind of, falls apart in this. It's kind of like, Cheryl had like her moment of joy, and now it's just collapsed.
Yeah, they're unrelated. Like she can feel stoked about the role and then also annoyed at Larry, but her riding high feeling comes down pretty quickly. It comes, it's like one level, one flight of stairs, and it's all kind of her bubbles popped.
Yeah, and also Lucy's upset too because Cheryl got the role that she wanted. So it's kind of that animosity from her too.
Yeah, you can sense a bit of passive aggression.
Oh, you can. Yeah, no, she's not happy. I mean, she puts up with it because Cheryl's Larry's wife, but you can see she's a bit upset. I'm guessing Lucy's probably a struggling actress. She's probably been waiting tables in LA, trying to find her big role to get out of it.
Yeah, and like we were saying before, I think the Vagina Monologues is a role that a lot of people really want. So it's not just any old audition; it's something you really gun for,
especially in that time as well.
Exactly, yeah. And she was really hopeful that she'd get it. And then there's probably a bit of also feeling of like nepotism. Well, you were just offered the role because you knew Jeff, who knew the director, sort of thing.
Like last week in Affirmative Action, when Larry says to the African-American lady, she goes, "Oh, look, I gave this other guy the role because he knew my wife." So that kind of nepotism can be perceived as well by other people.
Yeah, I mean, technically it is nepotism, but it's not. I think nepotism is fine. Like if you know someone who's good for the role, just give it to them. And you want to help out your friends and your loved ones as well. So it makes sense.
Yeah,
but from someone who's outside that group of people, like Lucy, you'd be upset about it.
You would. Back at home, the Davids are getting ready for bed as Cheryl is initiating sex. And contrary to what he said in the first scene, Larry says that he is not in the mood for it and that he is tapped out. Cheryl calls him out on it. She thinks that he could have something to do with seeing Lucy. She asks if Larry has been thinking about her since they met, and he says that he has defiled and degraded Lucy in his thoughts, and he can't do it to Cheryl. And Larry says he has no interest in Lucy or any of his ex-girlfriends. So he's like, so Larry's basically saying, look, I'm imagining Lucy in all these degrading positions and doing this to her and all these, unmentionable sexual activities. But he can't bring his wife into the picture because, he sees Cheryl as very pure.
Yeah, it's his wife. And she's not a fantasy. She's his wife. She's part of his day-to-day life. So
it's reality.
There's no reason for her to be part of his fantasies because he can probably act out those fantasies with her. So I do like how he says, I don't want to, I don't want you to be part of that world. He describes his
world, definitely.
His sexual fantasies as a world, like this all-encompassing, complex, universe full of exes and other women scene. Yeah, it's funny how he describes it. This scene reminds me. I could have seen this scene in an episode of Seinfeld.
Yeah. You mean with Elaine and Putty, maybe?
Yeah, or just Jerry and one of his girlfriends. It could have worked almost with any actor or actress and the person they're sleeping with. Just the way Larry and Cheryl talk about it, just how Larry describes this world. It was very Seinfeld-y for me.
Oh yeah, actually now you mention it, it does feel like something Jerry or maybe probably not Putty, but maybe like Jerry or even Kramer probably could have said something like that too.
Yeah,
I could imagine Kramer has some perversions. He seems like that kind of dude.
Yeah, look, I don't think Larry's sexual fantasies involve really, really, really crazy stuff. I imagine it's
really nasty shit. Yeah.
No, I think it's just normal stuff with just women who are taboo being exes or not even taboo, but just women he can't have that have to be fantasies because he's married and he obviously loves Cheryl. Yeah. I don't know whether it was intentional or not. I don't think it was, but when Larry says the word specifically tapped out, because a slang for sex is tapping it, I'm going to tap that. So I just thought that was like a nice, if it was deliberate, it's a nice wordplay. If it wasn't deliberate, it's just a nice coincidence.
Oh, I didn't think of that at all. I thought tapped out basically means he's, he can't do it. It's like, that's it's like when you're fighting and then you can't handle, like in MMA, and then you get like a grab or they twist your ankle and you tap. That means you can't do anymore. That's the way I saw it. But no, okay.
Well, no. I mean, it is a double meaning in that, yes, it does mean what you just said in that I can't because I am tapped out. But also tap being a euphemism for having sex. It works on both levels.
Tapping that ass. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I'd tap that. That old ad. There was like this ad from McDonald's or something in the 2000s, and it was very controversial. And I think the guy's talking about, I think there's like a woman in the ad as well, and I think she was eating like a burger or something. And then the guy goes, I'd tap that. But he meant the burger. If you go on YouTube and find it, it's a bit controversial. Obviously, a lot of complaints about that one.
Yeah, I can imagine. The only thing that I remember from the 2000s involving tapping is that song. I think it's T.I. and Eminem, or it's Eminem and someone. Yeah, either T.I.
Oh no, that's Smack That. Smack That.
Oh, is that Smack That? Oh yeah, Smack That.
I think it was Akon. Akon?
Was it Akon? Yeah, I get mixed up.
I think it was Akon and Eminem. Yeah.
Akon, yeah.
Very 2000s. 2000 personalities.
Yeah, Smack That.
All on the floor, Smack That.
Yeah, Smack That.
Yeah, I remember that one. Yeah.
Tap that, Smack That. Whatever.
Yeah. Cheryl's like, tap that. And Larry's like, no, thank you. Tap that. I'm all tapped out.
Yeah, can I tap that? I'm all tapped out. Tap that. You're not part of that world. Tap that.
You're not part of defile and degrading. Yeah. Anyway, the next scene, the next morning, Larry gives Jeff a bottle of Blue Label as a gift from Cheryl for the role. Larry is waiting for Lucy to go to lunch. Lucy walks over to get ready for lunch with Larry. She meets Jeff, who seems to be very attracted to her. And Larry says, what's a good place you recommend? Or Lucy says, what's a good place you recommend? And Jeff says, oh, I know this place. It's just down the road. And Jeff tries to become the third wheel in the date. He's trying, subtly to join them.
Yeah, I didn't realize until you just said that he's trying to join them to hang out with Lucy. I thought he was trying to join them because he thinks that Lucy having it with Larry is kind of an insult to Cheryl. I thought he was trying to stand up for Cheryl by inserting himself into the situation to kind of make it awkward for them or to make sure that they don't get up to anything. But as soon as you said that he's attracted to her, I'm like, oh no, that's not right at all. He's trying to become the third wheel so he can hang out with Lucy.
He can hang out with Lucy. Yeah, that's the way I saw it, because you can see as soon as Jeff looks at Lucy, like his eyes kind of light up. He's like, oh,
Yeah, no, you're totally right. I just, like I said, I misunderstood it. I thought he was trying to, make sure that nothing would happen between them. Just almost like be there on behalf of Cheryl to make sure that he was trying to insert himself into the situation to make sure that they, that they just had lunch.
Yeah, well, horses for courses, I guess. But to me, like, Jeff was keen on Lucy the second that he saw her.
Yeah. No, I think you're totally correct.
Cool. Larry and Lucy are reminiscing about old times at the restaurant. Lucy confides in Larry about being sexually assaulted by her stepfather while they were dating. Larry is the only person she told of this at the time. She says only him and the stepfather are the only two people in the world that know about the assault. She asks Larry to join her at an incest survivors group to support her during the meetings. Larry asks us if there's anyone else who can join her. But like I mentioned, Larry and the stepfather are the only two people who know about it. Larry accepts this as Cheryl walks into the same restaurant with her friend Nancy from the Pants Tent, who we saw. That was the one where, Larry took Nancy to the cinema and he had the Pants Tent and Nancy saw it the wrong way. So she was in the first episode of Curb and now she's in the 10th episode of Curb. So a nice bookend for her character.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was good to see.
For sure.
Cheryl looks upset at seeing them at lunch and he asks them to join the table, but they say that they will eat at another table as they walk off. And Cheryl, oh boy, she's not happy at all.
No, it just keeps it's getting worse for Cheryl.
Yeah, and just reinforces her beliefs that maybe Larry is indeed lusting for Lucy.
Yeah, I mean, like we said at the top of the episode, she's feeling insecure, then to run into an ex and to be forgotten about, to have the keys thrown at her, and then to see this, it's just, getting worse and worse for her.
And just boils over. I like in the scene as well, just one thing to add before we move on, that I like when Larry says, is stepfather considered incest? Is that considered family? There's like that debate. And Lucy's insistent saying, yes, stepfather does count.
Yeah, it's Larry to a T, isn't it? Where, someone is spilling their guts, obviously dealing with something very, very traumatic and very personal and very heavy, and confiding in Larry, and I mean, she's already confided in him back when they were dating, but asking him to accompany her to such what I imagine would be a really, really hard thing to do, rather than him trying to just listen and comfort her and be whatever she needs him to be in that moment. He's thinking of these like stupid technicalities of like, well, is a stepfather really technically incest? It's like, Larry isn't concerned about this person in front of him who's going through a hard time. And she even says, I feel like that happening in my life is starting to affect my life now. So, it's obviously something that's it's not just a past memory she's trying to deal with. It's having ramifications now in her professional and personal life. The only
Yeah,
thing
it
that
is. I mean, they're demons she has to face.
Exactly. A normal person would just listen and say, yep, I'm happy to be there, talk about it if she wants to talk about it, whatever she needs in that moment. And he's like, well, is a stepfather really technically incest? Like that's where his mind goes. And to me, it just typifies Larry perfectly.
But Lucy doesn't get too upset about it because obviously she knows that Larry's the only person other than the perpetrator to be made aware or to know about what happened. So, Larry's got no choice really then to support her.
Yeah, no, look, yeah, I mean, she just says, well, yeah, it is still incest. And I think
I think it is too, I agree.
Yeah, I mean, whether it's blood or not, you still, if you see that person as your mother or father, it doesn't really matter.
No.
I think because Larry relents very quickly, like he realizes that, or maybe I shouldn't push this technicality point that I'm trying to make. He lets it go very quickly. I think if he persisted, if he doubled down and said, well, actually, blah, 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 stepfathers aren't technically, it's not technically incest, I think then she would have been very upset. But the fact that he lets it go very quickly prevents that from escalating.
Because he knows it's a really fucked up thing that happened to her. And, he understands that he's the only person who carries that story with him. So, I think it probably would have made Larry to be like a more nasty sort of character in this episode if he just suddenly went, tried to justify, his stepfather the right thing and, really insist on it. I think it would have left, especially with the content matter as well, like the subject matter is really heavy. I think it probably would have left a bit of taste in, viewers' mouths, if that was the case. I think it would have, it probably wouldn't have gone too well.
No. Larry was the perfect amount of insensitive for it to still feel like Larry, David, and Kurt, because he does have humanity. He does have normal people emotions and thoughts and feelings. Sometimes they're just second and third in line, behind these stupid technicalities he has or stupid rules he has, but once he expresses those, then the actual, the proper emotions come out, or the appropriate emotions come out.
Yeah, I mean, credit to Larry. I mean, even though he does have a filter, it's a very thin filter, but he does have a filter nonetheless, and he has the ability to show remorse, and like last week with affirmative action. He showed remorse for what he said about the whole affirmative action thing.
I think Larry has. It's like I just think of it in terms of order of thoughts. So if you told me something heavy or something personal, the first thing that I would think of is, I hope Ivan's okay. That would be the first thing I would actually think in reaction to you telling me. If I was in the situation that Larry's in now, the first thing I would think of is, geez, I hope you're okay. That must be really hard. We can talk about it. Thoughts that most people would think. If I was thinking about it 3 days later, maybe it would occur to me, actually, he was a stepfather. Is that technically incest? I don't think there's anything wrong with Larry having that thought, in whatever he's thinking about it, in his private time or his personal time. But that just being the primary thought and the primary thing he says, and then the proper thoughts come in afterwards. That to me is Larry. His first thought is always like a weird technicality or just something inappropriate. But then, usually after that's sort of gone, after he's said it, or if that's been dismissed or whatever, then the sort of the second and third and fourth and fifth thoughts and expressions come in, and they seem to be a bit more normal, appropriate.
Yeah, a bit more appropriate. Yeah. But I mean, Larry is a human, but a different kind of human.
Yeah, he's got them in there, but they're just buried under his weird outlook on life,
Yeah, no, a very weird outlook. In the next scene, Larry heads back to his car as Jeff runs over to him. Jeff asks Larry for Lucy's phone number so they can catch up regarding representation, quote unquote. Larry reminds Jeff, I love this part of the scene. It's very brief, but it's very funny. Larry reminds Jeff that he's married and that he's happy for her to call his house. But Jeff says, no, you can just call the office. That's fine. So Larry just, even though Larry isn't going to pursue Lucy for a sexual encounter, we know this for, because he loves Cheryl a lot, and he's kind of he's over Lucy, and he's kind of he wants to move on. Jeff wants to pursue an extramarital affair, but if Susie caught wind of it, oh boy, I think Jeff probably wouldn't make it out alive. I don't think.
I think he'd be at the very least castrated.
at least, or he'll be buried in somewhere in the desert or something. They'll find his body. Yeah, well, vultures will be picking at him, in so wherever it is in California. I got no idea. Whatever mountains, or I don't know, he'll be found there eaten by bears or something.
Yeah,
Susie won't let him get off that easily. Yeah, I love that. I love how Larry just kind of gently reminds him about that he's married to Susie, and oh, that's fine. I'll just call your home number and leave it. Oh no.
Yeah. And yeah,
Great.
he doesn't say it directly to Jeff, but he's letting Jeff know that, like, I know what you're really up to.
Oh, yeah, he
Even in the
knows.
way he talks, he's like, oh, yeah, representation, huh? Oh, yeah. Like he's subtly telling him, like, I know what you're really up to, mate. Don't try and pull one over on me.
I know, it's great. Like, it's probably my favorite scene in the episode. Yeah, it's so brief, but I just love how Jeff just looks sheepish at the end of it, and Larry's kind of like subtly, he's saying,
Jeff,
I know what you're trying to do. I like it. I love it.
Jeff is so transparent in his real intentions, and Larry's onto him, and he doesn't directly tell Jeff, like, I know you want to fuck her, but he lets Jeff know. He lets Jeff know that he knows what he's up to.
He's clearly about it. Yeah. It's great. At the survivors meeting, the head of the group introduces herself and reminds everyone that what is said in the room stays in the room as they hold hands to establish their circle of sharing. One of the group members shares their story, some of them being very confronting, which I won't repeat on this podcast. The scene cuts to one of the group crying while telling her story before turning to Larry. Larry calls himself Todd, and he makes up a story about his uncle Nathan having sex with him at 12 years old. So the uncle that they're going to have dinner with later on. So, to show that he is actually, to try and fit in with the group, he makes up a survivor's story and he implicates his own uncle as a pedophile.
Yeah, I mean, I think at this point, if you've watched all of previous episodes of Curb, and this is the 10th episode you've watched, you've probably gotten used to the formula where, like a seemingly innocuous mention of a person or an event earlier on in the episode usually comes up in a bigger way later on. And as soon as Larry mentioned his uncle in this fake story, you know that if you remembered that he mentioned his uncle in the opening scene with Cheryl in bed, you know that those two, it's going to come together in some hilarious way.
In some way, yeah. No, I figured somehow, maybe like when we watched the episode for the first time last year, my prediction was, like, I didn't read the storyline when I watched it for the first time last year, but I predicted that maybe someone in the survivors group would be associated with the vagina monologues, like somehow. Like, I didn't figure out what. A couple of scenes later, we find out what happens, but I knew there'd be some kind of link with that, as usually is the case with Curb.
Yeah, unfortunate coincidence.
Yeah. Unfortunate coincidence.
My name is Cynthia, and I'm an incest survivor. Okay, this is the part where you guys say hello, Cynthia.
Hello, Cynthia.
You'll get used to it. You're new. I want to commend you all for having the courage to step forward. I want you all to feel safe. And this is our number one rule here. What is said in this room stays in this room. We have total anonymity here. And if we could right now put our hands together, and this sort of establishes a circle of sharing.
Larry and Cheryl that evening are in bed talking about what happened. This is the third scene where they're in bed together. You don't normally get this many scenes of them in that position.
Well, I mean, to me, I guess in terms of like writing, you think, well, where is a setting where people, even married couples, talk about more personal or intimate subjects? I think bed is an appropriate place. They're not just talking about going to lunch the next day. Like every conversation in bed has been a more personal, intimate topic of conversation or style of conversation. So I guess it makes sense in terms of like locations and where that conversation makes sense. But they seem to be in bed a lot more in this episode than
previously before. Yeah, Larry says to Cheryl's amusement that he actually broke up with Lucy. It wasn't the other way around. So I think that kind of makes Cheryl feel a bit better, saying that Larry still doesn't have these lingering feelings after all these years, or he doesn't think shit. I wish Lucy was still with me or whatever. So Larry broke up with her, which makes Cheryl feel a lot better.
Yeah, it tells her that he doesn't have any regrets.
No regrets. Cheryl reads a paragraph from her script which makes Larry horny. He initiates sex, but Cheryl says that she's busy reading her script for her performance, and Larry has blue balls as he lays there in defeat. So, Cheryl, and the way that Cheryl read it was very sensual as well, those paragraphs.
Yeah, I think she was, trying to get into character as much as you can, being a one-person show. But yeah, I mean, she's trying to, read it as if she would on stage, I guess, practicing not just the lines, but how she would actually interpret them. Yeah, it's funny as well. Like, I guess, you're talking about before about how many scenes are of them in bed. A running joke in this episode is they're both, one of them's horny and the other one's not. And in this case, Larry's horny and she's not. It makes sense to have those particular comedic situations in bed as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially with the subplot at hand, with them
Yeah,
trying
with
to, come up with ways on how to initiate sex. Yeah. No, you're right. It makes sense. Yeah, that's good.
It's just easier to set those things in bed. It's like, well, we're going to sleep. We're in bed. That's an easy place to show that joke repetitively. A misalignment of horniness.
I wonder if they filmed all 3 bed scenes at once, but they just changed clothes.
That would be
probably would have been easier. Just be like, hey, let's just do all 3 of them. Just change clothes.
Yeah, it would be efficient.
Yeah, it would be efficient. Yeah, I don't know. I'm sure if we saw the production notes or whatever, there's probably something like that. If anyone has like the run sheet, the production sheet from way back when, I'm sure there'll be something like that.
I'm sure it exists somewhere.
Yeah. The next morning, the Davids are waiting to meet the director. The lady from the survivors group, Wendy, walks in and asks Todd what he is doing here. So obviously Wendy and Larry know what's up, but Cheryl has no idea. She gets vibes from Todd about his secret, quote unquote. She makes up a story about meeting Larry. She makes up a story about meeting Larry, aka Todd, at a newsstand as a cover, and she thinks that he is a legitimate survivor. Cheryl asks for the truth. She assumes that they have been seeing each other. She quits the production and walks off. And Wendy confides in Todd to not tell her anything about her stories that she mentioned at the group. So, a chapter with Lucy was closed and Cheryl's forgiven Larry and understood what's going on. But, the way that Larry and Wendy are talking to each other, it sounds like, they've had a rendezvous sexually themselves, and they're just trying to cover for their story. And basically Cheryl says, well, my husband, it doesn't matter who it is, whether it's a hottie like Lucy or anyone else, he has extramarital affairs, so I can't trust him, and I don't want to be involved with this director.
Cheryl is kind of relieved that there's nothing to worry about with Lucy, and then the next day it seems like Larry's been having another affair. I think she thinks at this point that he's a serial cheater, or someone, for some reason it's all just coming out very quickly, consecutive days with all these different women.
So he's just he just seems like a Lothario, doing extramarital affairs, and Cheryl just quits the whole production. She doesn't want to deal with Wendy at all.
Yeah, no, she walks away. And before the scene ends, you do see, as soon as Cheryl leaves, obviously, everyone feels bad. It's awkward because they don't want Cheryl to misunderstand, but they have to maintain anonymity and respect the privacy. Yeah. But as soon as Cheryl leaves, Wendy's immediately says to Larry, swears him to secrecy, you can't tell at all. You can't tell Cheryl.
Yeah, at all. Excellent writing, excellent editing coming up. The scene then cuts to Larry and Cheryl. It's in the evening and they're at home. And Larry is telling Cheryl her survivor stories in full detail. The uncles on both sides of the family and all that stuff. He's going really into it. Cheryl feels terrible about what she did. Larry says that Cheryl should call her to try and get the role back. And the scene cuts to Cheryl talking to Wendy on the phone to apologize by also using a cover story. Cheryl finds out that Lucy got the role and that Jeff got her part.
Yeah, no, it's a genius way to tell Wendy that, Larry told me what's up, but also reassure Wendy that, Larry, it's not, her privacy is still protected. It's a smart way to solve the whole situation.
Yeah, and just to clear up the misunderstanding. But, Wendy probably in that moment, this was from the morning till the evening, Wendy just called any of the actresses that didn't make the role and probably said, hey, do you want a gig? And Lucy realized that, maybe something happened to Cheryl, and Lucy, as a bit of revenge, to Cheryl, was like, oh, I'm going to take the role. Fuck it. Let's do it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I do you mentioned how the editing's great, how it just cuts straight to Larry telling Cheryl's story. I think the point in time in which Larry's telling the story was chosen wisely as well. When you tell a story.
Yeah, right at the climax of the story.
Exactly, yeah. When you tell a story, normally it starts off, you're just setting the scene, and then it kind of builds up to whatever the main point is or whatever the height of the story is. If they cut to Larry starting out, him explaining the situation to Cheryl, it would have been funny, but it wouldn't have had that immediate comedic impact.
No, because he doesn't embellish anything. He just says everything the way that Wendy said it.
Yeah, and he's so animated as well.
Graphic detail. Yeah, he is.
The uncle was there, and the father was there, and they were taking turns, and they couldn't decide.
Both uncles, 2 uncles from each side of the family.
Yeah, and you do know,
you go into full detail.
Even if you hadn't seen this episode before, I think instinctively you'd know that Larry's not going to, he's like, yeah, I'll keep it secret. I'm going to do the right thing and protect your privacy. That Larry's, being the sort of person he is, would just spill the beans straight away.
Yeah, because obviously he wants to see Cheryl happy as well. And, he's probably thinking because Cheryl quit that she will be replaced, which she does. So, she's probably just trying to just tell Cheryl the truth straight out.
Yeah, and I mean, look, he owes Cheryl an explanation because rightfully so, she thinks that something is going on. I would as well, especially after dealing with Lucy in the previous couple of days, I understand why Cheryl's like, well, what's going on here? Like, you're not telling me this is weird. You're obviously covering something up. Larry owes the truth to Cheryl, but he also owes privacy to Wendy. So he's caught between this rock and hard place, as he often is. And I think choosing to tell the truth to Cheryl for me would be more important than protecting a relative stranger's privacy. Because all you'd need to do is say to Cheryl, look, I told you because I didn't want you to think that I was having another affair, but also it's important that you just keep quiet about it. I think that would be the only right choice you could make if you were Larry in this situation.
Yeah, for sure. Because I mean, you want to protect Wendy's privacy, but you also want to give your wife the opportunity that just came up too.
Well, you just want to be honest with her and reassure her that nothing's going on.
Yeah.
And I think it's just about priorities. It's like, do I prioritize my wife's feelings or the feelings of someone I don't know well? Mm-hmm. You've got to choose your wife. I don't think. I think that's. Yeah. So yeah. And the plan that they come up with so that Cheryl could get her part back and also protect Wendy's privacy and also make it look to Wendy that Cheryl's being reassured that nothing's happening by changing it from Incest Anonymous to Gamblers Anonymous. Genius choice.
Yeah, very good choice. Yeah, very wise with Larry's gambling problem. Jeff and Lucy are in a motel having wine. She asks Jeff if he is okay to drive after drinking, and he says that he will wait it out. So they're having a nice romantic evening together. In the next scene, Uncle Nathan walks in the door and tells them that there was a car accident which made him late. He said that he stopped as he is a doctor. He just says that a fat man and a young woman were in the car. The man is fine, but the woman is holed up in hospital. So obviously Lucy didn't make it out of there too well. So it's implied that it was Jeff and Lucy in the car. Nathan says the 57 Chevy in the crash was destroyed as they head out to dinner. And then Cheryl's like, doesn't Jeff have a 57 Chevy? And Larry's like, yeah, he does.
Yeah.
Very smart. So yeah. So obviously that writes off Lucy from the show. So it's implied she's either in a coma or maybe have succumbed to her injuries or, become disabled. Or in other words, her acting career's over.
Yeah. She's done.
Yeah. And Jeff survived. And then he probably, I bet Susie probably went to his hospital bed and said, what the fuck are you doing with this chick?
I'm sure Jeff made up some bullshit.
Probably. Yeah. Kidnapping hitchhiker or something.
I don't think if Jeff just said, "Oh, we were having a professional, we were having a business lunch in front of people." Like if Jeff said, even if nothing had happened, but obviously Jeff, they're in a motel, they're drinking wine. Jeff wants something to happen. He's created the situation for it to happen. He technically didn't do anything wrong. If they didn't do anything, but. I can imagine Jeff saying to Susie, yes, I met with her. Yes, we were together, but we were, we were at a restaurant or we were in my office. Like we were in a professional setting in front of people. So, it's all above board. If he said to her, well, nothing happened, but we were in a hotel, Susie would still be like, well, you didn't cheat on me, but it was still heading that way. So
you were alone with a woman in a hotel and things could have happened with
deliberately alone with
lubricant.
A woman in a hotel. Yeah. Like you engineered
with a bit of social lubricant
like that. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And in the final scene, Cheryl is getting ready for the performance as she got the part back from Lucy. Larry and Nathan are in the room and they wish her luck. Wendy walks in and accosts Nathan after Larry introduces him to her. And she tells him to leave the theatre and she kicks him out. Larry says he'll meet him after the show as Cheryl and Larry both watch on in shock. And then I love the actor who plays Nathan. I forgot his name, but I love how he's kind of like, you can see a smirk on his face as he's getting kicked out. You can tell he's having fun in that scene. It just kind of breaks character a bit. And that's the end of the episode, and that's the end of season 1 of Curb.
Yeah. Been a roller coaster.
It sure has, yeah.
What do you give this episode out of 5 Larrys?
3.5. I enjoyed the episode mostly. I liked, my favorite scene was, like I mentioned, with Jeff and Larry when Jeff tries to get Lucy's number. That's a really, really good dynamic there in that scene. Obviously, it's a good send-off for season 1 of Curb. It had its moments. It wasn't a classic like Beloved Aunt or anything, but for a season finale, it got the job done.
Yeah, I'm pretty much in agreement with you there. I also give it 3.5. The one thing that I noticed about this episode, especially compared to the last 2, Beloved Aunt and Affirmative Action, is that Larry, he does get in a tiny bit of trouble, in moments in this episode, but he gets out of that that trouble very quickly by just explaining things to Cheryl. Like he doesn't like in Beloved Aunt, we talked about how, out of the 3 major situations in that episode that Larry gets in trouble, one of those would have been enough to carry a normal episode through. But the writers just kept on adding shit that he had to deal with on top and on top and on top. And then in Affirmative Action, the same deal. At the end of the episode, he's seen by a large group of people as a racist, which is pretty heavy. At the end of this episode, Larry winds up like getting on. Well, he doesn't even really do anything wrong, but like there's no like major complications for him. He kind of just, nothing bad really happens to him. And if it does, it's more of
his uncle who suffers.
Yeah.
It's his uncle. He implicates his uncle in like a pretend story.
Yeah. Larry gets away with pretty much the whole episode scot-free.
Yeah, but I guess that kind of gives him a clean slate for season 2, where his shenanigans continue.
Yeah, it's kind of nice. It ends on this episode kind of starts on a positive note with Cheryl getting the role and her being really stoked, and it kind of ends on as positive as Curb can be with Larry. Kind of ends positively for him, which nothing actually good happens to Larry. It's just that nothing bad happens. So for him, that's positive.
Yeah, and Cheryl still, I'd imagine Cheryl still did the performance, and she did it, and she got another achievement.
Yeah, Larry and Cheryl kind of come out on top.
Yeah, they do. And but Uncle Nathan had to wait outside.
Yeah, and Lucy is seriously injured.
Oh, he's seriously injured. Yeah, well, let's say seriously injured. In a coma, but then she came out. And she's all right.
Hopefully, yeah.
Yes. Well, anyway, that was season 1 of Curbcast, and I guess we could probably give a little recap of season 1. What you thought? I mean, what are your thoughts on the season overall?
I talked a lot about in this season. I tried to really think about, like, from a writer's point of view, like how you would. I'm not a writer. I don't have any experience in writing. I don't have any ambitions to be a writer, but just putting myself in situations, or like in the situation of being a writer, like how I would approach, how I would structure an episode in context of a season and the preceding episodes and the overarching storylines you want to sort of weave throughout a season. I can almost like see how the writers were thinking about the escalation of complications for Larry in this season, and you can just see them getting better and better. And one thing as well, I think because this show has a lot of similarities to Seinfeld, Larry comes out of the gate a lot stronger than he did with Seinfeld. Seinfeld was his first major project where he was sort of the head of it. He ran it with Jerry, obviously.
Yep.
And it took a couple of seasons for them to really find their formula and get into that classic Seinfeld mode where, every episode more or less is a home run. But because this Curb differs a lot from Seinfeld, but there is a lot of similarities because it's just a further extension of Larry David and his world and how he thinks. And I think after, a couple of years off the back of Seinfeld, he's got the confidence. But because it's not totally different to Seinfeld, if he did a show that was completely different to Seinfeld in every way, different style of show, different style of comedy, different actors, like in every way different, I think it would have been like Seinfeld, and it would have taken a season or 2 to find its formula, to find its footing. So I think for a season 1 of any show, this is really strong. A couple of dud episodes, but that's just what happens. There's always going to be winners and losers. And the fact that you've already got a top 5 or top 10er in Beloved Aunt in season 1, to me, is like the perfect show of the confidence and strength and skill that Larry and the writers have from the get-go in this season. So yeah.
I agree. Yeah, definitely. For me, I think it's a solid season to start off with. I'm just adding to your point. I said this probably a week or 2 ago, but I believe that it was a smart move that Larry went to HBO to do Curb, because with HBO, there was no real limit to what you could say or do. You could even say cunt, in an episode.
Yeah.
On network television, you could never get away with it, saying that word. Or it'll be bleeped out and wouldn't have that humor. It wouldn't be as funny.
Yeah, the topics in this season have been incest, whether incest is technically incest, if it's a step relation, erections in pants,
porn,
porn,
lots of sexual themes. Yeah.
Lots of sexual
the house
themes.
That come built.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like a lot of themes and topics that, network television wouldn't touch. And if they did, it would be very, very delicate, much like, say, The Contest in Seinfeld. It's an episode about a topic that can be done crudely, but they did it very delicately and intelligently. And, so, this is just a lot more blunt, a lot more direct. Like you said, no limitations. So, HBO was the perfect fit for what he envisioned Curb should be.
Yep, and the Curb gets better from here. So we're very excited to watch some more episodes.
Yeah, in contradiction of the title of the show, this season has not curbed my enthusiasm. It's it's emboldened my enthusiasm.
It's become part of your enthusiasm.
Yeah, it's increased my enthusiasm.
Increased it. Increase your enthusiasm. Yeah, no, it's certainly no curbing here. Anyway, that was season 1 of Curbcast. Thank you so much for listening. It's been a great ride over the last 10 weeks. We will be back with season 2 of Curbcast next week. We'll start with episode 1, but just a bit of a disclaimer. We did record for our Patreon subscribers seasons 2 and 3 last year in 2020. So some stuff that we mentioned about, Patreon and all that stuff might be a bit out of date. So yeah, I'm sure all those details will be in the show notes when the episodes come up, but no, you won't have to wait long for season 2, episode 1. That'll be out next week to all of you. But if you wanted to listen to seasons 2 and 3 earlier, you can subscribe to our Patreon page and you can donate a small amount of money every month and you get that as well as other bonus content. So you can listen to seasons 2 and 3 earlier than everyone else.
That's right. And I think it's important to mention as well that we recorded a lot of season 2 and 3 last year in a major lockdown here in Melbourne, Australia. So if we do make mention of that, and there's probably a bunch of references that, to what was happening last year when we were recording. So yeah, like Ivan said, if things feel a bit out of date or a bit out of sorts, it's because we recorded these episodes a year ago or like 9 to 12 months ago. And also when we recorded season 2 and 3, we hadn't actually seen those episodes. But
no, that's actually one good point. Yeah, no, they were fresh to us. Unlike this season where we watched them a second time. Seasons 2 and 3 were fresh. So yeah, we'll probably talk about the next 2 seasons much differently to what you expected.
Yeah, but it does follow the same sort of format. It's just a episode by episode, scene by scene review. Yeah, so it shouldn't be too disorienting to listen to this season and then season 2 and 3. But yeah, we just wanted to give you a bit of a heads up in case things just feel a bit out of sync with how we've talked about season 1 and what we're mentioning, that's happening in the world at this time as well.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we are looking forward to bringing those out to you from next week. And you can send us an email if you want to say hello. Let us know what you think of the podcast or even about Curb in general, curbcastpod@gmail.com. And we're on all the social media platforms the major ones anyway, at CurbcastPod. It's been an absolute pleasure being with you for Curbcast Season 1. And we are looking forward to recording Season 4 later in the year 2021. And we'll bring those out to you when we can. My name's Ivan.
And I'm Stephen.
See you, I guess, in a few months' time for Season 4. You take care of yourselves and each other. Thanks for listening. This podcast is part of Mishmash Media, an independent podcast network. Follow us on social media at Mishmash Media AU or support us on Patreon. All those links are in the show notes.